So, hi, John. Thanks very much for taking the time to do this here. Where are you today? You at home?
I am. I'm here in Glasgow. And just to point out, we do have electric lighting in Glasgow, electricity and stuff like that. Just not in this particular room. Yeah. And do you know what? Today was a pretty glorious day outside.
It was. Yeah, it was good here.
And it was out. It was actually. I haven't had the heating on the whole day, which is bizarre because like I'm the coldest person that I or anybody else knows. Like I'm always cold. So it must have been really mild as well, which is, it felt nice. I don't know about you, but it kind of felt good.
Yes, I was actually had the same feeling today over here in Northern Ireland. Yeah, it was a really nice sunny mild day, and it was great.
You know it's going to rain tomorrow, though, right?
Now, well, you had to put a dampener on things.
Well, that's just the Scottish way. You'll pay for it. Like you never get anything good without having to pay for it later.
Absolutely correct. Let's talk about your album. You released Half Drunk Under a Full Moon in April. It was supposed to come out last year, but obviously because of the whole pandemic and COVID, it was being put back a few times. Are you glad it's finally seeing the light of day? Hopefully in April.
Yeah, I mean, whatever happens, it'll come out in April now. It's like it's a full year behind schedule. And then you have to sort of factor in the fact that we recorded it in June 2019 as well. So by the time it comes out, you're not far off it being 2 years since we made it. And like there's no downside to that, but it does leave a sort of strangeness surrounding the whole thing because, you know, it's been a long time since I've listened to it, but now that I'm sort of starting to do more in the way of promo for the album being released, I'm hearing more and more of it, and it's a strange one because it's almost impossible to put yourself back in the sort of mind frame of where you were at that time. Like it almost feels foreign, but in a good way, because I could imagine these things could feel foreign, and at the same time, you know, you really dislike them as well. It feels a bit foreign, but in quite a satisfying way. As you know, like, God, you know, there's lots of things coming at you, and I have no idea that they're on their way. And usually with your own music, you know what's coming next, and it's been there's lots of little nice surprises on there.
Absolutely. Obviously, it was a while back. You said you were writing it, but can you remember the songwriting process behind this album? Because it's a bit of a change direction from the last one.
Yeah, I can remember it really quite clearly. Not necessarily the writing of particular songs, but I can definitely remember the kind of basis of the whole thing, which was, it was really two things. There was 2 or 3 songs on the previous record where it seemed like there was something in those songs that I only noticed after we'd recorded them and after that album had been released. They hadn't been on my radar when we went out to record that record. And then, so they were a kind of nice surprise when there was something really pleasing to the ear about those 2 or 3. I keep calling them threads because really that's what they were. And they were so sort of pleasing to the ear, well, to my ear at least, that I felt like I needed to explore them as much as possible. And from there, you know, what started to happen was that you could hear this complete sound, where you really could hear what was the sound of a finished record. It just didn't have any songs yet. So all I needed was some songs to be written for it, because it was plainly obvious, you know, that what that record would sound like, you know. So then it really was just, it kind of is quite easy after that. You know, after that, it's really just it's just about putting the time in. Because, you know, the album already sort of knows what it wants to be, you know. After that, it's just about using those years of developing a little bit of a craft to give it some bones, you know.
And where do you get your inspiration for your songwriting? Could you be just like walking down the street and something could come into your head, or is it something maybe you would experience? What do you draw from mostly?
Yeah, do you know, I've been saying the same thing and answering that question the same way for the last couple of years, simply because to me, you know, that it's the absolute truth, which is that, you know, if anybody had any control over, you know, whether it's in music or you know, whether we're talking about literature or movie making, or you know, no matter what the art form is, if anybody involved in that had any control over their output, you know, in my case, for instance, I would write the greatest pop song every day of the week. Mm-hmm. You know, like that should be all of the proof you need that you have no control over it and you have no say in it. And it's hilarious. It's hilarious the degree to which we give ourselves that big pat on the back, you know. Mm-hmm. Hey, look what I did, and I did it for years, mm-hmm. and until up until a couple of years ago, when it suddenly, in a sort of flash, became blindingly obvious that I had no say in this, you know. And it was great, you know, because it was completely liberating. Mm-hmm. It was the single most liberating factor when musically that I've ever had, because then all the pressure was off. I didn't have to worry about whether, you know, this song or that song would arrive, like, because it's none of my business whether it does or not. What is my business and what is anybody's business is the craft thing. If they've built up a craft, then they have the tools to be able to grab those ideas when they come, and they can actually do something with it. Mm-hmm. But these days, you know, it used to be that I read a lot of books, and I would take down incredible, you know, just booklets full of lines and notes endlessly, and I think it's because I felt like, surely if I'm gonna have content, then it has to come from somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I don't do that anymore because I realize I don't have to. You know, for instance, there was a song on this record that was essentially written in about 2014. The only thing it didn't have was lyrics. It had everything else. And it took from 2014 to the end of 2017 to finally for the right day to arrive for that was lyric writing day. And you know what? You know, it was as blatant as we were on tour at the time, and I don't do anything on tour. Like I don't write. It's not what I want to do with my day off. And I remember we were in Denver. We were there for the gig that day, and I woke up on the bus that morning and instantly realized that was, oh, it's today. Today's the day that those lyrics are ready to come. And I sat in a dressing room, and 20 minutes to half an hour later, those lyrics that I had been trying so hard to write for 3 years wrote them, you know, they write themselves. And I certainly you would never catch me writing lyrics in dressing rooms, you know. So these things are I love now that they're out with my control. For years, it was the bane of my life, sort of kind of pretending that I had some control, and yet you know that you don't have any. And now it's just it's just glorious.
So they come from the ether. What was the song actually in particular?
It's one called The Last Songbird.
Right. Yeah, it's a great tune. I mean,
it just needed some words.
I mean, you certainly know your way around a great melody, but what do you, well, you've probably answered it there. Do you think a great melody is more important than a good lyric in a song?
No, it's not. They're definitely equally as important. It's just for some reason, melody is really just incredibly important to me. It doesn't seem, I don't hear much in the way of music, as in what's going on out there at the moment, and I never have. Like God, you know, I would have to go back to like my early 20s to be able to talk of a time where I had a good idea of what was going on. That's been a long time, and but the little bits that I do hear, which are usually in the back of taxis, it doesn't seem like melody is in fashion. It's not even that it's not in fashion. I just don't think it's important anymore to the kind of the music that most people make now. And that just is what it is, you know. Like, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
it's just for me. I'm a sucker for melody. You know, I want it to rise and fall, and I want it to. I really don't want 3 notes in a row to either be the same 3 notes repeated over, or to barely move, you know, either side of the one in the middle. I want, you know, the first one to be way below the middle one, and then I want the next one to be as far away from the first one as it can be as well. You know, that's what I want to hear.
I read somewhere that you see melodies as colors.
Not in that way. What's the name of that condition that people talk about, where they see music in color? There's a name for it which escapes me.
I've heard of it before. I just can't spring to mind here at the moment.
It's not that. It was what I think. What that comment was to do with this record, and that I could, as I said before, there was actually songs formed around this really incessant sound that wouldn't go away. That sound came with colours, you know. So it's not even that the songs had a colour each, or it was that there was just this sort of multicolored aspect to the sound that I kept hearing. So yeah, it's nothing that sexy, you know, like, you know, everybody likes to have a something that makes them a bit special.
Yeah, but I mean,
Not that.
I absolutely understand what you're saying about that, because it's probably the most uplifting album I've heard this year. So it is colorful, you know, it is bright and colorful, and every song on the album could be a single. You know, it's that good. It's a perfect antidote to cheer people up for the way everybody's been feeling in the last year. You know, and I definitely advise everybody to get on it. You know, as I said, every song sounds like a single. So do you write, when you're writing the songs, do you write with singles in mind?
Oh God, no, because
No.
for us, from the very beginning, it was clear to me that I had no idea what was a single and what wasn't a single.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember sitting in from our very first record deal, sitting in the sort of the offices of the label. Well, you know, they were having these big planning meetings, and why we were there, I really don't know. We shouldn't have been there, but we kept being sort of invited. And I realised really quickly that my idea of what we should put out there to represent an album, because at the end of the day, for us, a single is just something to represent the album. I realised really quickly that my idea of that and people who are in the music business is they're quite different.
Yeah.
No, the other thing, because that would also mean that you were kind of writing to order, and writing to order is the one thing I can't do. I don't know how to do it. I would love to be able to do it. There's something about it that I kind of really, well, I definitely respect. I always loved the idea of the brow building, you know, like just, and I know that that's something that happens now. The way that I understand the way it happens now seems quite far removed from the brow building idea, but I definitely have a respect for people who can sort of clock in for the day and say, okay, I'm going to write this type of song today, or I might write 3 of them. It's really, there's lots of things I can't do, and that's one of them. And it would definitely probably in lots of ways make my life a bit easier if I could. But you know, I can't do that.
Well, a lot of, as you said, a lot of songs that are written today are written by about 10 different people. They're all chipping in with bits and pieces. I mean, could you imagine somebody or 10 people working on one of your tracks? You couldn't cope?
No, I think I don't know how that would work. But that thing of, you know, 10 people all being involved in the writing and production of the one song, it's kind of understandable why it's gone that way. You know, like pop music, I know that's such a sort of old-fashioned term for it, but it's still the term I use for it. It was always going to reach this limit. It was always going to reach this limit of where you couldn't squeeze much more out of it. And I think we're seeing that. I think we're there. It's not even that, you know, it's not like with climate change where, you know, we're not far off. Like, I think the pop, the sort of the pop music really reaching that point where it's not that it's out of ideas, but it's that you have to do so much in the way of tiny adjustments to make anything that might sound even just a little bit different. I think that started 10 years ago. You know, we're well into that. So it's not surprising that you need so many people to write even just the one song now, you know.
Yeah, there's only so many chords.
There's only 11 notes. People always say there's 12, but the 12th note is just an octave above the first note, so there's really only 11. And when you think about it, it's actually incredible what's been done throughout, you know, the 300-400 years of from classical music onwards to now with those 11 notes. It's frightening.
That's amazing. I mean, the first single you put out from the album was said last year, 6 Days in June. It hit the radio, revealing a new sound. You made the video, and then the pandemic hit. So how did that feel when you were gearing up to put the album out? You were putting a new single out, and then the world just went on standby.
Yeah, honestly, the only thing I remember really paying any attention to and being bugged by was really the fact that, you know, we had all these dates set up and sold and ready to go, and we had crew members who'd been with us for years. His whole year was planned out to do that work. Who just, you know, they just were told one day that wasn't happening. And some of them were compensated, and some of them were helped, and some of them weren't. And honestly, that was, you know, whether for me personally, I can't speak for the other two band members, for me personally, but when the shows happened, kind of really doesn't matter to me. They're going to happen, you know, but you could see really quickly that, you know, especially when you've got so many friends who are all, I mean, I really don't have many friends who aren't self-employed, you know, so that was that was the biggest thing for me, was hoping that they would all be taken care of, and most of them were, but I think some fell through the cracks, unfortunately.
No, it's a pity. Hopefully everything will start up soon, maybe in hopefully the second part of the year, and, you know, everyone will be all right and get back to work.
I think at the moment, I'm not coming across anybody who is willing to say that they know, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody is being really quiet about making predictions. I think it's been said a lot though that, you know, when everybody is let out of the cage, I'm interested to see what sort of atmosphere that creates for live shows. You know, all that pent up. I mean, yeah, that live experience probably for a lot of people will be, it's the complete antithesis of what everybody's been living with. That's going to be, I think, you know, it's going to blow people's minds, you know, and might even be overwhelming for some. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if especially in the front row of gigs, you see people shedding tears, you know. And I don't mean just, I mean at all gigs.
Just like, in the experience. But
it's the sheer relief that, okay, whew, I'm glad that's over. Yeah.
But these songs on this album are so uplifting, you know, and you just want to dance hearing them. You know, they're crying out to be played in front of a live audience and to be sang along with by a live audience. So it is going to be amazing.
I hope so. And it's, you know, it could be a twist of fate that you know, had it come out when it was supposed to, it would have been right at the time where, you know, everybody was in a state of shock because really it was coming out right at the time where really the full-on lockdown happened.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's coming out at a time when, you know, probably and definitely possibly it might mark the time where things are starting to finally, once and for all, relax.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the weather should start getting that little bit nicer. So, you know, it could end up being a good thing from that point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be a perfect antidote, as I said. Let's talk about a couple of tracks. You released the song "Strangers in the Street" last year again, featuring PP Arnold. When you were writing the song, did you have her in mind to sing it with you?
No, definitely not. And uh, although the day after I wrote it, I had demoed it and it sounded, it was really just a finished track. So as usual, it went on to my iTunes account, and my son and I share the same iTunes account. So he had heard it on his way back from work that night, and he came into my room and he said, you know, that song's great. You know, it's just a shame that you're singing it. And I know what he meant, you know, because you know, let's face it, it's a ballad. You know, it's not it's an unashamed ballad. And I get where he was coming from. And with PP Arnold, it was just a pure accident, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were interested in hearing somebody else's take on that song, and there's a hell of a lot of great female singers out there, but you know, that's not really the point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're looking for someone with a lot of character, and they're a lot more rare. And PP Arnold definitely has character. You know, if you should know that it's her when you hear her singing. You shouldn't be in any doubt of who it is when she starts singing any song. Whereas, and I'm gonna do this old man grumble. The way that music production's gone, and I know the reasons why are really quite simple. It's gotten harder and harder to tell the difference between vocalists.
Pro Tools.
It really has. Like, you know, that it's not an old man sort of, oh, things were better in my day. Like, there was a lot of crap in my day, whenever my day was. But that character thing is harder and harder to come by. And she, you know, she has bags of character. And then, you know, lockdown had happened, and so, you know, we were gonna, apart from the fact that we wanted some interesting content to put out there, given that all of the plans that had been laid had been scuppered. So it couldn't just be as simple as just getting her to sing, you know, on the already recorded album version, when, you know, take my vocals off and get her to sing it. It had to be a version that would suit her. So, you know, it was all done pretty quickly, and you know, I had to fashion a version that might suit her. And then you had the obvious thing of all of us recording our parts in different locations. You know, she's in Spain. So that, you know, that was interesting. That process made you want to pull your own teeth out sometimes. But I'm pretty sure it worked. It worked, you know. I think it's so different to the version that's on the album that it doesn't, neither steals the other's thunder, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, they're both great versions. She's an absolute legend, you know. It's always good to hear her
We were lucky.
doing her thing. Love the latest single, Need a Love. Need a Little Love. I love the whole 60s vibe and the strings and the black and white video. You know, it's certainly a very uplifting tune. What's the story behind that song?
Personally, I think it's just it's the most, like, I've constantly been, throughout my life, sort of, it seems, been on this sort of mission to always try and see if you can make, not the perfect pop song, but there's a lot to be said for sort of working within these structures that have been, you know, these structures have been in use for years, and you could find it confining. I see it the other way. Like, I love seeing how much more I can wring out of those structures. And Need a Little Love, to me, it really, as soon as it was written, and even now, to me, that it makes me smile, because I feel like, I don't know, when it comes to wringing more out of that pop song structure, I don't know how much more can be wrung out of it. Other people might be able to, but I can't. I feel like with that song, I really sort of reached the point where, in the one song, I managed to get so many of those things that have captivated me all this time, and managed to squeeze them into 3.5 minutes, you know. And you know, the lyrics in that chorus, they tell their own story. Mm-hmm. It's kind of important to mention, though, that it's love and sex get confused almost constantly, and there's a difference. Mm-hmm. So it's not that the person singing needs a little bit of the other. It is actually love, you know. Mm-hmm. It has that sweetness to it.
No, it's an absolute belter track. My favorite track on the album is "Living in the Dark." Really love that there song.
Somebody just, I did an interview last night, and the guy who did the interview said exactly the same thing, and that's strange, because that song sort of hasn't occurred to me till now. So I'm gonna have to kind of go and listen to it.
There you go. That's the next single, then.
He said exactly the same thing too. You know, if that's not a single, I don't know what is.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to go and check, see what it is that I'm missing. The thing is, we recorded 10 songs for this record. There's 10 songs on the album. Mm-hmm. We only recorded 10. You know, it wasn't the usual thing that you record 14, 15 or more, or a little bit less, and then you choose from it. We recorded 10 because as far as I was concerned, I only wanted to. I knew that we were going to have to put so much time and energy into every single one of the songs, and I was only prepared to do that for songs that I really, really liked. Mm-hmm. So that song is definitely on there because I liked it then, I like it now. It's just the fact that that's 2 days in a row now that somebody said exactly the same thing. So I'm gonna have to go and see what it is I'm missing, because I'm missing something, I think.
That's a sign. Maybe it's just because, you know, we're coming from a fan's point of view. You're coming from a different point of view because you wrote it and you've been invested in it.
Well, yeah, do you know, come to think of it, it does have a really cool, and it's all over this record. There is a lot of these picked acoustic guitar things, but they're not sort of folky picked acoustic guitars. They're really sparkly and they take over. You know, like they're all over this record, and on that song, they're really dominant. And they also have a strange tuning that I can't even remember what tuning it is at this point. But it makes it sound it's amazing what happens when you change the pitch of just two strings, how much difference that makes to what comes out of a guitar compared to the standard guitar tuning, you know, because that was all it would have been two strings changed in pitch, and you come out with this thing that when I hear it on that song, it sounds to me like it's really complex. I think, God, that sounds to me, if I didn't know any better, that sounds like somebody who really knows what they're doing. And thing is, with those tweaks to those two strings, it's actually the simplest thing in the world to play, you know. But I'm going to go and listen to that song tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole production on the album is amazing. It just sounds so great, you know. And again, you've worked again with Tony Hoffer, who you've worked with for years. Why is it? What works with Tony? Why do you always return to him to produce your records?
So the reason I'm sort of faltering is because there's just so many reasons. We're friends for a start, and that's you know, that's not something to underestimate. He almost always is the best person to. It's like he almost always knows what a song or a production needs, and he knows exactly what it doesn't need as well. So he when it comes to us especially, and me especially, I need him to step in. But with this record, it was slightly different, because for the first time ever, as far as I can remember, because usually with Tony, there's no point in sort of working with somebody and then dictating to them. You know, like if you're going to work with them because of their particular talents, you got to let them get on with showing that talent. With this record, that was still the case, to a fair degree, but because, as I said, all of the songs were written around this really particular sound. You know, every single song. There's barely a song on there where you can pick out one instrument or two instruments or three instruments or parts that the whole song hangs on. They're all hanging on tiny little bits, all in the right place, that come in and out in really exact particular places. And because of that, we were asking something different of him this time, which was really to be patient with that for a start. But really, what we were asking him to do, what I was asking him to do, really was to help me realize that this sound that had arrived 2 years before, you know, a year and a half before, that was, and that's different to the way we usually work. and we won't work that way again, you know, because it made me slightly uncomfortable at certain points, because he got it. He understood that's the way it had to be. That actually, in so many ways, these things were by the time they got to him, they were kind of fully formed. So we were asking him just to fully realize them. But I felt uneasy a few times, because we weren't playing by the usual rules, which was to let him have as much freedom as we would ask for. So we will make another record with him, and we definitely won't work that way again, you know. But it had to be that way. We spent more time on that record than any other by far, you know. It was really, really labor intensive. It's the most labor intensive record I've ever made, and I don't think it was very healthy. But in the end, it was completely necessary as well. I just, you know, because we got out of it exactly what we needed to get out of it. But I wouldn't want to do it again.
No, well, you can hear it all on the record. Trust me. As I keep saying, absolutely fantastic record. But it's been a while since it was recorded. So, being a songwriter, I'm sure you've written other songs, have you? Is there any more in the pipeline ready for the next record?
A couple of weeks ago, somebody asked that, and on that day, my belief, my honest belief, was that I really haven't been writing very much at all since we finished that record. And it turns out that's not true. It turns out we've been recording a lot in the last 2 weeks. I won't say why, because I'm sure it's the kind of thing that the people in charge will want to sort of announce in a particular way. But I think for people who like our band, I think it's going to be something that people will be really, really happy about. And so in the middle of this quite intense period of working, I started going through really just the last 18 months worth of bits and pieces that I had been working on, and I hadn't realized just how much of it there was. I mean, so I was under the impression that I was really going through this really long fallow period, and it turns out it had been the opposite. So given the way things look when it comes to the rest of this year, it's definitely conceivable that we could record a record this year, and it's a really particular type of record. It's, you know, last week when I suddenly realized how much material was there, and how much of it I'd forgotten that I had been following another one of these threads. I hadn't realized, you know, I genuinely thought there was nothing there. It turns out the opposite is true. So it turns out it's been a pretty productive last year, 18 months. So if we wanted to, and if I want to, if I can find the passion to have to sit down, and you know, the ideas are the easy part, you know, shaping them into something's the hard part. If I can find that, then we could make an album this year easily. We could make an album this summer easily. So yeah, it's funny because I was being absolutely honest when I answered a few weeks ago that I haven't written anything. And it was a nice surprise to find that that wasn't true. Well, why? I don't know. You'd think I should know. That's anybody's guess. Forgetfulness, I guess.
And can you tell me if the songs are a departure from the current record? Is it a whole different vibe?
Yeah, they are. I can hear a desire to sort of go in the opposite direction in them. There's a hell of a lot of brass. Every single one I kept, with every new one that I loaded up, oh, there's more brass, and there's really prominent, with these really prominent melodic brass lines that are that are really, a lot of the songs are hanging on these really hooky parts, which, on the one hand I was like, oh wow, that's really sounding, it does sound great, and at the same time I thought, oh right, but we're sort of making a rod for our own back, because we're still a 3-piece guitar, bass and drums band. So recording these things with brass sections in studios is the easy part. Taking them on tour is the harder part, because let's face it, nobody wants to dilute their take-home pay at the end of the tour. So
absolutely.
That one, I can't. But the more I listened to them, the more I realised that all of that brass was essential, and I've no idea what you would replace it with. So we might be stuck with that. But that's something you think about later. I mean, this latest record. I mean, that was when anybody hears it, they'll realise that it was clearly a record that wasn't made with any thought of how it would be played live in mind. So yeah, we're getting more and more used to that.
Yeah, I can vouch for it, and I'm looking forward to hearing the new things. Just a couple more, John, because I don't want to keep you all night. I'm sure you have a lot more important things to do.
My son. I've given my son recently the job of making my dinner, because I realised that over the last year I had descended into basically just eating cereal for every meal of the day. And he's cooking something. I can smell it. It smells good.
Well, I'll let you go in 2 seconds. Out of all the albums in your collection, which artist or band do you have the most albums by?
Dylan. Just because he has the most. I can't think of many artists that have many more records in them in general. I mean, the record he released during lockdown was that, I forget the number.
Yeah, that was the one that the really long song on it.
Oh, Murder Most Foul.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
The Kennedy one. Oh man, I loved it. I didn't love all of that record, but I really loved that. So Dylan, just by virtue of the fact that he has more albums than just about everybody anyway. The thing is, with the people who I've gravitated towards, and since I was 15, 16, when I was that age, when everybody was listening to Oasis and Pulp and Blur, I had just discovered Pink Floyd. They couldn't have been more opposed. And so, those Britpop things just couldn't get a look in for me. But I've tended to pick I've tended to gravitate towards the artists that have huge back catalogues, and it's probably the single reason why I've never found myself needing much in the way of new music, because there's just so much content there from the 10, 15 people who grabbed me the most, I don't think there aren't enough hours in the day for me even to give those people all my attention, never mind bringing other people in, you know.
I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly. I mean, The Wall is probably one of the favorite Floyd albums, you know, from
The
start to
Wall's where
finish.
I started.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny is that I started there, moved backwards, and it was a strange journey because I didn't move backwards sequentially. It was backwards. You know, it should have been Animals,
Yeah.
and then Wish You Were Here, but it was, you know, it was from there to Dark Side, to Animals, to Wish You Were Here, to Piper at the Gates of Dawn, to Metal. It was done in such a haphazard fashion. But man, when I fell in love with Pink Floyd, it was the summer between my last, where I was just about to go into my last year at school, and nothing is ever compared to that, which is, you know, that's a heavy thing for you, you know, girlfriends and wives to hear. You know,
I think a lot of people have that experience with Floyd. Once they hear them, they really get into them. You know, if you are going to like them, you will really get into them.
well,
You know?
for me, that was first love, and there's nothing beats first love.
Hopefully, your wife won't see this.
She knows.
Just one more. Have you seen Goonies yet?
No, still not. I've seen bits
No?
of it. I've probably seen the whole movie out of sequence in 15, 20-minute chunks.
Mm-hmm.
No, I still haven't seen it. I didn't. Even though the name comes from there, I've just never been able to find it important enough to have to go and watch it. You know, maybe I'm missing out on something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's classic. It's a classic.
I watch
film.
a lot of TV and a lot of movies. Like, it's sickening how much of the screen, how much of it dictates my life these days. Yet I still haven't found my way there yet. Barry is disgusted with me. He just can't. He can't get his head around it, and it's just one more thing on his list where he just doesn't understand anything about me. You know?
Maybe one day. Well, listen, John, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And Half Drunk Under a Full Moon is absolutely tremendous. It's my most uplifting album of the year. It really, really makes me smile, and it just cheers me up when I hear it. So
I'm really glad. You know, if it does that for one person, then it's done its job. Yeah.
It really does. And I hope everybody watching here can get on it when it's coming out in April. And I wish you all the best of luck with it. And hopefully down the line, you'll get back out on tour, and everybody needs to hear these songs live.
Yeah, we're just like everybody else. We're just desperate for all this to end as everybody else. Yeah. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you.